I think it's clear that the article in which he and his team appeared showed poor judgment, but I also want to make sure that I talk to him directly before I make any final decision.
That talking has taken place, and we're awaiting said final decision.
Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Washington Post Top Line. I'm Rick Klein.
And I'm Jonathan Karl.
Every day at noon Eastern, we're right here bringing you the latest political news and analysis, the biggest developments, and it's twitter.com/thenote to see even more. And there is a lot going on today, John, as we await word out of the White House. Kick us off, sir.
There's actually a lot of political news today, but there is no place to start but here. Woodshed. General Stanley McChrystal has been summoned to the White House. He had a 29-minute interview or discussion or who knows what with the president, but alone, one-on-one. We don't know the results of that yet. And I'll tell you, all of Washington is, to quote John Kerry, a Twitter about this. Does he go or does he stay? We know he left the White House. He has not come back yet. That's not a good sign.
We're tracking vehicle movements of the White House like it's the OJ chase. Yes. It is really strange.
Unfortunately, we don't have the helicopter and the white Bronco, but
Just short of that because of the airspace over the White House. It's hard to imagine a scenario where he's able to stay on, given that he left the White House before the meeting that he was ostensibly summoned to be part of, the Afghanistan-Pakistan policy meeting. He has gone from the White House. We're waiting to hear what happens.
Are you speculating?
No, I would never speculate. Okay. I would just say
we don't know yet.
I understood. No reporting to share other than that. Our analysis of said events. Next up, Haley's Comet. You will hear that top line time and time again over the next couple of years, I can assure you. Nikki Haley is now in line to become the Republican governor of South Carolina, assuming she wins this fall. She captures the nomination yesterday, and she's on something of a fast track to the big time now. And there were a couple of other big races, including the first potential black Republican member of Congress in 8 years, also in South Carolina. A lot of big developments on a pretty big voting day.
Yeah, and let's not forget there was also an election in Utah, and this one is one that I find significant because you have a guy by the name of Mike Lee, 38 years old, a real Tea Party conservative who has won the Republican nomination there. Unlike Rand Paul, Sharon Angle, who both have some races on their hands, this guy is almost certain to win, and he would be right now by far the most conservative member of the United States Senate.
And watch this Tea Party caucus grow potentially. We could see more and more members depending on what happens this fall. Jim DeMint, Tom Coburn will get some friends.
Guys that are looking to make DeMint look like a moderate. So we'll see what happens. Next up, the moratorium. A judge has smacked down the administration's 6-month moratorium on deepwater offshore oil drilling, and this was quite a decision, Rick, because not only did the judge do away with the moratorium in the White House, the administration is going to try to do it again in a way that will stand up legal muster, but he also accused the administration of effectively lying and making their case by citing experts that they said were in favor of this moratorium. Go back to the experts, as the court did, and they were saying no, actually they were not in favor of the moratorium.
This was a big smackdown for the White House. The judge, in really stark language, said that the administration had no argument here, that they weren't offering proper science, that they weren't able to make the case. It's interesting, they didn't just appeal that case. They're trying to reinstitute a different kind of moratorium out of the Interior Department. But this was a big rebuke, I think, on a key priority coming out of the BP oil spill. And finally, Blanche's Bank, the latest development in the battle over financial reform. The Wall Street Journal reporting today that Senator Blanche Lincoln of Arkansas is trying to create a special carve-out exemption for a bank in Arkansas, of all places. Go figure that one out.
And I mean, Rick, just look at the healthcare debacle, right? I mean, what almost derailed the healthcare bill were things like the Louisiana Purchase, Mary Landra's efforts to help her state, of course, the Cornhusker kickback, and Ben Nelson. It just doesn't look good.
And the thing is, she may actually get her wish on this because the votes are so close. You'd think there's some lessons learned from the last one. You're exactly right. But if this is what it takes to buy it, then this is what they end up doing. Yeah. Well, we regret to say that Senator Jeff Sessions, Republican of Alabama, on our fault, not his, we're unable to make the interview happen today. We'll hope to reschedule it soon, maybe in advance of the Kagan hearings next week. But the good news is we get extra post-politics time.
Yeah, and a full show of post-politics.
The full quarter hour on post-politics, and we're joined by Karen Tumulty of the Washington Post.
And I've got a few things on my mind.
All right, well, we'd like to hear that. Well, let's start with the big news, what everyone's talking about. Obama's at a tough spot now. I mean, he summons him to Washington. He's Robert Gibbs and the president both yesterday very clearly telegraphing their frustration. How could he possibly keep him in place given all that?
Well, I did think it was interesting that the president said that he hasn't made any final decision. And I'm wondering if that word final is really the operative one here, because, certainly just about every military expert agrees that what happened in that magazine article was, in fact, an act that was at least close to insubordination, if not an actual act of
Clearly
insubordination.
fireable.
Absolutely. So the question, the president certainly could go either way here, but if he does decide to keep on McChrystal, it is going to have to be with an acknowledgement that he is doing it despite a fireable offense.
Yeah, and what I don't understand, Karen, and maybe you can help explain this to me, if you're going to fire the guy, why do you summon him to Washington? Why do you bring him into the Oval Office for a one-on-one? There is a military chain of command. When MacArthur was fired, Truman didn't bring him to the Oval Office. When Admiral Fallon was fired by President Bush, he didn't bring him to the Oval Office. You can either send a letter or a telegram, or you can have David Petraeus, his real boss, his immediate boss, fired.
Well, there are procedures in the military code, but there is also politics here. And don't forget that when Truman fired MacArthur, what happened was Truman's opponents in Congress immediately invited MacArthur to come give an address to Congress. That's where we got the old soldiers
Turned out to
never
be a
die.
rather memorable address. Yeah.
Exactly. So they've got to handle both the substance of this, and they've got to worry about how it affects the policy in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they've got to worry about the politics.
But this is not MacArthur, is it?
No.
I mean, this is not a
It's
case.
not the same level of.
First of all, because you've had people, senior military people, retired generals have been critical of this president. Members of Republicans say they would understand if this guy was fired.
MacArthur was an actual dispute over policy.
Right.
If you read that article in Rolling Stone, there isn't really much difference over the policy. So this is really this is an act of attitude.
But it seems like, though, a big piece of all of this is that it opens up the can of worms of Afghanistan. And now we're talking about Afghanistan policy. There's a big debate that's been simmering on the Hill for quite a while now. And then you have no drama Obama with this war council today, this going on for hours here, trying to come out of there with a coherent strategy and a coherent leader. It seems like it's just going to increase the questions that's already been bubbling up about what we're doing over there.
Well, now, there are those who are very gifted at spinning in the White House who will argue along the lines of there's a pony in this room somewhere, that this may actually present the president an opportunity to sort of re-articulate his policy in Afghanistan, to re-clarify it, and maybe to make the American people a little more comfortable and make them understand it a little better. Because one of the big questions that has been out there is, will there or will there not be a troop drawdown next summer? And it was, looking less and less likely.
And by the way, there is a policy disagreement that we've seen come out of the McChrystal camp, not in that article. What's interesting about that article is how little substance there was in it. I mean, this guy had repeated lengthy interviews with General Stanley McChrystal, and he comes out with a bunch of personality, I mean, it's sexy and it got in
Oh, hey, John, if you'd have had that, what would you have let on?
But he's got I mean, let's have a little bit of substance. But we know that within McChrystal's camp there is real concern about the idea of drawing down beginning in July of next year. And the article didn't really get to that.
Yeah.
But that is a real substantive policy disagreement.
Whereas, Vice President Biden and the White House position is that drawdown's going to happen.